Welcome to episode 5 of the 1A Auto Talking Tune Show. I'm Jeremy.
And I'm Dan.
And we're here to talk about noise today. We had a customer write in with a 2008 Corolla that they just changed the spark plugs on, and suddenly they have all kinds of noise through their audio system. So, since they just changed the spark plugs, we figured that's probably a good place to start off with this diagnosis.
Yeah. One of the most common sources of noise through the radio is either your alternator or the ignition system. Mm-hmm. A lot of times it's due to changes in the resistance in wires, which on this vehicle it doesn't have, but between the plug and the coil, which this vehicle does.
Right.
So recommend putting some dielectric grease between the plug and the coil for a few different reasons. One, it's going to give a better connection, which will reduce that resistance from reusing that old coil. It will cut down the chance of corrosion or anything getting between the two, the coil and the plug. And on top of that too is if you're going to have the car long enough, it's going to make it a lot easier to take that coil out later.
It really is.
If you've ever worked on one of these vehicles where the spark plugs have a service life of 40 to 60,000 miles, they've been sitting there together for a long time. If the previous owner, previous installer didn't put that dielectric grease on there, that rubber boot's pretty much sealed itself now to that plug. And when you go to pull it out, instead of coming out in one solid piece, it's one top piece, maybe a center section.
Right, maybe the bottom section is around the bottom of the plug.
Yeah.
And now you have to fish it out with all kinds of different pliers and hooks
and long sockets, and it just makes it a mess.
Right. So on the topic of audio systems, we were doing a little research and we found 14 automotive audio facts, and we wanted to share them with you today because they're pretty fascinating. Did you know that in 1930 the first car stereo was available? It was an aftermarket stereo. You could add it on to any car you wanted, and at the time cars were around, the average car, we'll say a Model A, was around $600 ish, and this car stereo was $100.
Yeah. To give you an idea of how much that is, that's almost $3,000 today to put in a radio with one speaker.
Yeah, and at the time you needed to add additional batteries, cut a hole in the roof for the antenna. It was a major surgery to get this radio in there.
An install could literally take 2 people 3 days to do, which now is insane.
Right.
Doing a radio takes maybe about an hour or two.
Exactly. That's longer than it probably took to make the Model A at that point.
Yeah. Oddly enough, record players were once available for cars. In 1956, Chrysler offered what they called their Highway Hi-Fi, which installed into the dash and would allow the 7-inch records to be played in the car, but not the normal 7-inch records that everybody's used to. Because those ones usually were only good for a couple minutes per side, you'd have to sit there and flip every couple minutes after every 2 or 3 songs. So Chrysler created their own version, which was a 16 RPM standard. The problem being that there weren't many people releasing on that format.
Right.
It was a record player, so they were kind of just naturally prone to breaking down, tearing up records. And again, that was very expensive too. That was roughly around $1,700 as an option for a radio. They didn't last very long. They made about 2 years, and Chrysler called it quits. There were a couple other ones afterwards that were a little more standardized, but again, a record in a car is not...
it's not convenient.
No.
It's not an iPod.
No.
8-tracks, on the other hand, were a heck of a lot more convenient. They came out around 1965. Ford had them as an option, and they were available in Mustangs, Thunderbirds, and a few different Lincoln models. It's a way better option than the record player, for sure, but 8-tracks weren't exactly perfect either.
We take it for granted now that we have all these different options and stereo upgrades, but there used to be a time where you could get one, and that was just whatever they offered. One of the first aftermarket companies to jump in the ring with a factory sound upgrade was Bose in 1983. And this package was available for the Cadillac Seville, the Eldorado, and the Buick Riviera.
For CD players, in 1985, Mercedes-Benz was the first one to have a CD player option, which was 6 years before my first CD, which happens to be Dr. Dre. What was your first CD?
My first CD was Meatloaf.
Nice. That's something to be proud of right there.
It's a different one, I'll give you that. Now, most of us grew up in a time where cassettes were the standard. Unfortunately, that's no longer the case. The factory said goodbye to the last available cassette deck in 2010 in Lexus SC43 430.
Wow. Yeah, I'm not gonna miss that, I don't think. Yeah, please be kind, rewind. So did you know that Volkswagen and Audis, I'm not sure exactly what year, but some of them had a funk button on the dashboard. It didn't actually do anything, but it sounds like it does something fantastic with the stereo system. Apparently that was short for telefunk. Apparently that's a German word for radio or something like that. It might have been used in taxis or something like that.
Right.
But either way, it would be pretty great to have a funk button on your dashboard.
Right. Now leave it to Toyota to actually do something that makes sense with a button like that. Toyota debuted their party mode button in the 2010 Toyota 4Runners. And what this one did was, it was for tailgating, and by pushing the button it would send all the sound to the back speakers, so you could have the tailgate up and be partying with your friends, and gave a little more bass too, so something better to dance to.
Exactly. That's what I want to be doing, is dancing. So, speakers. Everybody wants a lot of speakers in their car. The most speakers ever in a production vehicle was in a Range Rover just a few years ago. It was 27 speakers, 24 channels, 1900 watts. But rumor is that the new Cadillac CT6 is actually going to have 34 speakers.
Yes, we're talking doors, in the headrest, the dash, and the rear deck, everywhere.
Right. It's going to be absurd.
Yep. Now, we take for granted AM, FM, and the new standard is HD. HD radio. We're all familiar with HDTV and how that's better than the regular thing, but and that stands for high definition. In radio's case, it's just more of a name. That's it.
It's just a trademark name.
Right.
Yep. Another fun fact: if you've ever installed an aftermarket radio, or if you never have installed an aftermarket radio, this is some good information for you. There's really only 3 wires that you need to make the radio turn on. There's a red one, which is ignition power. There's a black one, which is ground. And then there's your yellow, maybe orange, but mostly yellow, which is your other power wire.
Yeah. It's
basically your constant power or your memory wire.
Right. A common failure for the first-time installer is to get that red and that yellow swapped.
Yes, exactly.
They'll still function. The problem is every time you go to turn it back on, all your radio presets are gone.
Lose them all.
Great, perfect sign of having them cross backwards.
Exactly, and I have done that many times.
You wouldn't be the only one.
Yes.
Humans can hear between 20 hertz and 20,000 hertz. The lower ranges is more of felt than it is heard. That cut off somewhere around 80 to 100 hertz. What people usually hear or think they hear with a sub is just the stuff around it vibrating.
Right. Yeah, that's pretty wild. The loudest car audio setup ever done is 182 decibels. That is quite a bit. It's about the same as a rocket. So if you ever think you hear something loud, it's not the loudest.
Yeah, that's not even safe to hear. At 160, it's possible to have permanent hearing damage, like tearing your eardrum.
Yeah.
That was momentary, what they call burping, or just full blast as quick and loud as they could, and in a controlled environment, not something you hear on the street.
Yeah, you don't want to be in that car. Yeah. So that wraps up our 14 fun facts. If you are more interested in some fun facts or just automotive knowledge, or you just like seeing us on camera, of course.
We appreciate it.
Yeah. Certainly subscribe to our YouTube channel and visit our website at oneiauto.com. Thanks for watching.
Bye. Yeah, I combined, I think we have 13.
Yeah. Oh, dang it. 13's pretty good. That's alright. 13, 14, that was a good shot.